Blizzard has recently released a video on the endgame systems we'll get to work with, briefly touching on stuff like power progression and other activities at max level. One of the first systems we'll get to engage with after clearing the campaign is called Capstone Dungeon, where we can expect to face tougher monsters and additional challenges that will test our character's power level. Upon completion, we'll gain the ability to switch to the next world tier, unlocking harder difficulties and all the stuff that comes with them like experience, gold, and sweet loot. Judging from how developers described it, I think Capstone Dungeons will act as a power check that will allow players to determine whether their character is ready for the increased challenge a new world tier usually brings. I think this also means that we'll need to complete them while playing solo, although keep in mind that this is just a hunch and it might be possible we can instead go through them with another player. As we gain more and more levels along the way, we'll get to engage with the main returning system from Diablo 3 in the form of Paragon levels, expanding from our own class skill tree. In this new and improved version, we'll get to choose our own path by rotating the board to select which aspect of our character we want to boost. For example, choosing between intelligence or strength-based skills, creating interesting combinations that I am sure will keep theory crafters busy at least for a little while. In addition to progressing through the Paragon level skill boards, we also gain access to Boons and Glyphs, although there are not many details regarding what kind of benefits they might grant. If I were to guess, I'd say they will be something along the lines of legendary gems in Diablo 3, making them substantial power-ups that we'll get to mix and match to support our chosen playstyle. Next to the Paragon system, we also have the Codex of Power, which is where we'll gradually collect the legendary aspects we can infuse some items with. Aspects will have a chance to drop after completing a dungeon and will be account-wide, so you'll always be able to use the ones you have unlocked on any character. This system is pretty handy when it comes to getting builds going by having key legendary aspects readily available, which is definitely a nice quality of life improvement. Another big part of the endgame content that developers mentioned in this latest update is Nightmare Dungeons, which are basically a deadlier version of the normal ones with increased rewards. In addition to having more monster density and extra objectives that we'll need to complete, these dungeons will also have random affixes that will modify them in a variety of ways. I fully expect stuff like terrain hazards and general debuffs that will be familiar to many gamers, but they also mentioned one that I think is pretty interesting called Hellgate. Basically, portals will randomly spawn in a location near you and start vomiting monsters that have nothing to do with the ones you would expect from the dungeons you're in, and will keep doing so until you destroy them. Considering that Diablo 4 has a different pacing than Diablo 3, and even some base monsters have nasty abilities that could mess you up badly, I think it's going to be a fun affix that brings a healthy amount of added chaos. Accessing a Nightmare Dungeon will require a specific sigil that is consumed upon use, and that you'll most likely have a chance to get while completing pretty much any endgame activity. I also bet that party members will be allowed to participate without having to consume a sigil of their own, so make sure to group up in order to share the rewards. In addition to dungeons becoming more dangerous, the open world of Sanctuary also gets darker as we get to endgame content. For example, in some parts of the different regions, the forces of hell might start having more influence on the world around them, messing things up more than usual and turning them into something called Helltide Areas. As we can expect, these areas will be packed with more dangerous monsters that will drop a special currency in the form of shards that you can then use to open some specific caches that you'll find within the zone themselves. As we fight our way through these Helltide areas, we'll also need to deal with environmental hazards such as meteors falling from the sky, rivers turning to blood, and other fun complications that could add a layer of difficulty that is always welcome, as long as the rewards are worthy of the effort. There will also be additional activities called Whispers of the Dead. Although they did not provide many details, they sounded like secondary tasks that may include gathering items, killing monsters, and in general completing stuff that you sort of automatically do while normally playing through the game. Once these tasks are completed, we can turn them in for experience and a collection of randomized items that might include some guaranteed legendaries. Finally, developers gave us some insight on how PvP works in Diablo 4, although unfortunately it is stuff we already knew. Players will get the chance to face each other in specific areas called Fields of Hatred. Monsters in those areas drop shards that need to be purified before they can be used as a currency to purchase PvP-specific rewards such as items and cosmetics. However, other players in the area will be notified whenever we are attempting to purify the shards we are carrying, making us a visible target that can be looted upon being killed. As it often happens whenever new details get released, this developer update raised some pretty major concerns. The first and biggest one I have for now is tied to the cost of respecking, which is a vital process of any ARPG that can easily make or break the entire experience. According to what Blizzard said, the costs would be really low up until around level 40, becoming increasingly more difficult to sustain after that. As we can see here, the cost of refunding a single point is around 53,000 gold, which is a steep price when considering the economy we have seen during beta. Of course, our gold intake should get higher and higher as both levels and world tier increase, so it goes without saying that I fully expect we'll earn much more gold than what we got at level 25. But even when that is taken into account, refunding something like 200 points would cost upwards of 10 million gold, which sounds kind of insane for something as trivial as changing our skill points. Blizzard have already stated that builds are something they want us to stick with because it is a part of a character's identity, and that they would prefer we make an entirely new character with a different build instead of just changing it multiple times on the same one. As much as I'm trying to look at things their way, I cannot shake the feeling that making decisions that affect gameplay this much based exclusively on what would make sense in terms of lore or character identity in a game like Diablo is absolutely nonsensical. I guess the only thing we can do for now is hope for the best and remember that if swapping builds ends up being too expensive, they can always lower them or perhaps even remove them entirely in future updates. The other big thing that kind of worries me a little is the fact that PvP seems to reward items similar to how the gambling NPC has always worked in the Diablo franchise. This might make PvP one of the best ways to farm gear and therefore character power, which could create massive issues. For instance, if members of the same group can remain friendly, participating in any PvP-related content would be next to impossible for solo players, as entering Fields of Hatred alone would almost guarantee getting instantly ganked by 4 people and dying without the chance of fighting back. On the other hand, even if party members can attack and damage each other, the system could still be abusable by filling up the zone with friends and simply avoiding each other as much as possible, focusing only on other people to quickly defeat them and get the shards they drop. We already know that there can be up to 12 people within a zone without phasing out, and since we can make parties of up to 4 people, that would mean 3 separate parties that do not phase out from each other and can all work towards making sure that other players cannot stand a chance unless they're organized in the same way. I think it is really important that Blizzard puts systems in place to prevent this from happening at all costs, because I really feel it would make an entire section of the game almost impossible to enjoy for a wide variety of its player base, which would be a massive problem. For the moment, all we can do is look forward to future updates. We already know there is going to be a new one on April the 20th, so make sure you stay tuned to get the newest info by subscribing to the channel. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.